Here is another important rule of thumb as to why you should provide references. References enhance the quality of your assessment. They add value, and therefore if you use references, you are adding value to your assessment in different ways. You are paying tribute, respect, you're acknowledging the actual source, which is a basic principle, human nature. You should acknowledge the sources. You should not take the credit yourself by omitting the references. B, again, you are demonstrating to your lecturers that you are doing the right thing, that you are actually being professional and you are providing citations. So some students also, I have to say, they provide the false references just because they are desperate to submit their assessment. Sometimes they intentionally provide just any reference. And some lecturers like myself, I am inquisitive by nature and I like to find out whether those sources are truthful or not. So I go to the actual source, and sometimes I find that the students actually cited just any reference without any clue really, understanding that that reference does not connect with the content of their assessment at all. And that is, again, misleading, and that is considered academic misconduct, perhaps not necessarily plagiarism, because here the student intentionally is trying to mislead, to fool the lecturer. But that's another topic, probably for another session. Here is another reason why, another rule of thumb that you should follow. Sooner or later, depending on how high you go in life, how much you progress through your professional career, someone who really doesn't like you might come back and start digging in your past. Even a reporter who may not necessarily dislike you, he or she might be interested. Did this person actually behave well when he or she was a student? And you can see here the evidence shows that a lot of the times these individuals many years ago unintentionally or intentionally committed plagiarism. And as you can see, the pressure becomes too much for them to keep their positions, and they end up resigning. Now, Germany is an exemplar because in Germany, apparently, the standards are maintained at a much higher level, and this is an argument that I make usually in my classes, than in other countries. In other countries, you have individuals who have plagiarized, and still they do not resign, or there is no such pressure as in Germany or in the United States or in other countries for these individuals to leave their posts. So another rule of thumb is, some students say, well, if I have to use references, then I will have to cite every sentence. That is true to some extent. For example, if you are writing a literature review, you are constantly referring to other sources that are not your, it's not your knowledge. It's not your expertise, it's not your idea, notion, concept, or experience. So there are, I will say, thousands, if not millions of examples out there where the authors, they cover their backs. You can see this exemplar here. Every single sentence is supported by a reference. So does this limit students' critical thinking? The answer is no. Depending on the section, some sections of your assessments or assignments, they have to provide some background, some literature review, some numbers, the characteristics of a country, for example, the demographics. That requires citations, and I will say that will require citations at the end of almost every sentence. Whereas in other areas, writing an essay, for example, you might have to cite references, but you also have a lot of room for critical thinking, for extending that knowledge that the sources provide. So I have some exemplars here, non-referencing versus referencing, academic misconduct, plagiarism versus not academic misconduct, or versus not plagiarism. So you can see that some of this content is not considered common knowledge. Therefore, the author on the right-hand side is appropriately providing the references. Here you have other examples where authors extend or add to some of these references or citations they are providing. So when I write my own articles, typically what I will do is I will not cite work that has been cited, because this is a form, to me, it's a form of plagiarism. You're using the source, which is the authors of this article, which are here, to cite the work of other authors. So typically it should be in Hall and Jacobs to 2012 and so forth. I have to actually admit that many authors out there do this, and this is wrong. They cite the authors as the original source of some information that when you dig a little bit deeper, you realize that it's actually not them, it's actually other authors. But again, that is a topic for another session. Here, the point that I'm trying to get at is this one here on the right-hand side. I use sentences that are not cited because on most occasions, these sentences that are not cited are the extensions, are the knowledge of the actual author. So for instance, here, you see the first sentence. If I were to write an article or an assessment for that matter, I will pick those areas, those sentences that have not been cited. Here, for example, I provide one sentence and then I try to paraphrase it in different ways. And I'm not perfect in paraphrasing. I mean, I prepare this just to provide some examples. I prepare these exemplars here, these demonstrations, just for the sake of providing some examples. However, they could be tweaked, they could be massaged, they could be paraphrased in many different ways. The common point, however, the commonality in all these sentences is that I always acknowledge the actual source, be it in the form of paraphrasing or using, for example, the page number when I'm referring to the verbatim, the actual content that I copied from that source. So in all cases, I am recognizing, I'm identifying, I am acknowledging the actual source. So there are numerous ways, as I said before, where there is room for your creativity. Again, the bottom line is you must refer to the actual source regardless, whether you are using verbatim, the so-called direct quotes, or if you are using the paraphrasing way of indicating or presenting information that is not your own. So once again, I have other examples here. And I identified this article because I thought it would be useful. It provides both worlds, the world where the sentences are connected to the actual source, and other sentences where the authors obviously are extending the knowledge and are providing their own ideas. So this brings me to the end of this presentation. I hope that for the sake of clarity, this presentation provided perhaps new ideas, more clarity overall to those of you who are not very sure of what plagiarism is. So the bottom line is, if you are unsure, always talk to your lecturer or tutor. Never ever carry on without asking the right questions, because I have been through misconduct hearings dozens of times, and I have to tell you, they are never ever ending on a high note. They are embarrassing, and sometimes they can be traumatic, because the students, sometimes the students are accused formally. They admit that they did that either intentionally or unintentionally, and the consequences could be dire. I have been in misconduct hearings where the student was expelled from the class. they failed the class, and on other occasions, they were actually expelled from the university. And again, this could haunt you forever in your professional career. Even if you become the most successful entrepreneur in the world, someone might dig into your past and find out that 25, 35 years ago, you were expelled from University X. So bottom line, do the right thing. Talk to your lecturer or mentor or tutor if you are not sure, but do not submit your assessments without making sure, 150% sure, that you are not engaging in academic misconduct. Thank you very much indeed, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.